just watched a video of James O'Brien speaking on LBC in defence of Keir Starmer's trade deal with India. He basically tries to say that anyone who doesn't like it is racist. He doesn't actually say that, but that's what he seems to be getting at. Which, to be fair, I don't want him here on grounds of race, but probably a lot of people don't necessarily feel as strongly about that as me. He actually has a pop at Farage, a personal dig about him, about his lips or whatever it is, but it's again, I don't like Farage, but it's a bit petty to have personal digs at people rather than actually debating the topic, which shows how weak his argument is. And that goes both ways. I don't think people should have personal digs at him or Diane Abbott or Sadiq Khan or anything like that. That's why whenever I have a dig at I try and keep it factual, as tempting as it is to say a few things otherwise.
Almost every right-wing front page this morning is largely negative. Tax break for Indian workers is the focus that they're going in on. And not mentioning in much of the coverage that it's exactly the same social security arrangement that we currently have in place in about 17 different treaties, including the whole of the EU, Norway and Switzerland. So if a French company or a German company was bringing workers here for less than 3 years, they would enjoy exactly the same dispensations. They still have to pay their taxes at home, which I gather are about the same level. So the claim that these workers are going to be better off than British workers seems to me to be a blatant lie. So no prizes for guessing whose nicotine-stained lips those claims have dropped from first this morning. So there's a blatant lie there. But what makes it worse is the fact that these lies are coming from people whose lies about Brexit caused us to become the first country in history to impose economic sanctions on itself. I think there are many reasons to question the deal with India, not least the nationalist, quasi-fascist nature of the leadership. But I don't know quite what it is about Indian workers that makes some people on the right of British politics and media think that they don't deserve the same deal as French workers or Norwegian work. Can you think of anything that might be off-putting to the kind of character that voted for Brexit to reduce the number of foreigners coming here? Why they would be comfortable with French or German or Norwegian or even South Korean workers enjoying this social security arrangement?
Basically, he points out the glaringly obvious that the deal is reciprocal and that British workers can go and work in India and not pay their equivalent of the taxes. But I think that's where the comparison stops, really, because what you need to look at is India, the economy in India. Although it's a strong economy, it's the largest population in the world now. They've overtaken China. They've got an endless supply of cheap labour. The average wage in India is less than 1/10 of the average wage in Britain. And by bringing employees over from India rather than employing people here, Indian companies can, in fact, something like car manufacturer or something like that. I don't know what the unions would say about it, whether they'd be scared to be called racist or whether they'd stick up for their members. But an Indian car manufacturer, or what would have been a British car manufacturer that's now owned by Indians, they could employ people in India and second them over here rather than paying the British wages. And then at the end of the 3 years or so, or longer than 3 years if they're swapping over the employees, it's only 3 years per employee rather than a 3-year deal. So they could go several years without recruiting anyone over here and then move all of their manufacture to India, not have anywhere near as much redundancies to make because a lot of their employees will be going with them back over to India. Some would be staying here because they would have married or pleaded asylum or ridiculous things like that. And basically they'd have their Indian workforce already trained, not have as many redundancies to make over here because they haven't been recruiting people for 4 or 7 years. And also under this trade deal, they'll be able to bring the cars over here tariff-free or next to tariff-free. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is, like I said, James O'Brien and Keir Starmer will point out that it works both ways. A company could recruit someone here and then second them over to India to somewhere where they could have quite easily have hired someone for 1/10 of the price. It doesn't make business sense. When you look at it in real term figures, there'll probably be 90 to 99 times more people seconded from India to here than the other way around. It'd be interesting to see what the figure is now. I'll try and look that up later. Another thing James O'Brien points out, that we already had the same deal with about 50 other countries, including Norway and France, but I voted for Brexit. I don't want people from Norway or France to be coming here stealing our jobs either. It's a complete farce. Again, James O'Brien uses the topic that's got nothing to do with Brexit to criticise Brexit, but again, I've pointed this out numerous times. I voted for Brexit. I encouraged other people to vote for Brexit, and I think it was a good idea to vote for Brexit. There's not been any problems with Brexit itself. The problems have been caused by people that never supported Brexit in the first place. People like Theresa May, David Cameron and Boris Johnson to be running the show. First of all, Boris Johnson running the Leave campaign. We need. Are you recording, mate? Yeah. Hello, mate.
Hi,
hello.
guys.
You're right. Basically, Boris Johnson leading the Leave campaign when he'd been writing articles for Remain just weeks beforehand. I think it was weeks beforehand, I'm not sure, but again, he wasn't a true Leave supporter. He just jumps on the bandwagon for his own career, and it paid off quite well for him. And then you've got people like David Cameron, who promised to implement Article 50 within a few days of the vote, should we vote to leave, and then, which he obviously didn't think we would, and then when we did vote to leave, he reneged on that promise, resigned, which I don't have a problem with him resigning, but he should have left it a day or so, implemented Article 50, then resigned. Then the Tory party, because most of their MPs supported Remain, they elected a Remainer to negotiate the deal, and there was no incentive for her to get a good deal. She was against it. So the sort of argument around Brexit and them claiming that it's failed, to me it looks like, say if I was to say that a Land Rover is a good car, and then someone else was to say, well, I crashed my Land Rover into a tree. It's like, well, obviously it didn't work out for that person. Easy, mate. I've just, as I'm videoing, I've just had an immigrant just crash his bike into me on the pavement. People will probably say he's not an immigrant. I don't know whether he's a first generation immigrant, but he wasn't one of us. This is basically Croydon. Can't see any police at the moment because they're mainly in cars, but you've got all these immigrants, they just go around, they do whatever they want, they don't care. Their argument saying that Brexit's failed rather than the delivery of Brexit failing is like someone saying that a Land Rover was a rubbish car just because they crashed one into a tree, when in fact it's their driving rather than the car or the tree that's to blame. And I feel it's been the same thing with Brexit. Brexit was a good idea, and the people that we elected decided to deliberately crash Brexit into a tree. That's how I see it.